Greetings, YouTube. This morning, while coming back from a bargain hunting excursion, I was listening to the NPR show 1A. Is it 1A? I think it's 1A. And the host is leaving, and he was been playing some of his favorite stories that were covered during his tenure. And one of the stories he replayed was about black Republicans. And I got to tell you, black Republicans mystify me. Much the same way that trans Republicans or gay Republicans, or for that matter, women who are Republican mystify me. Because at least for the first three groups I just mentioned, the Republican Party and their platform want you dead. They don't want you to exist. They are quite happy if law enforcement just guns you down in the streets. They're not going to bat an eye. And for the latter party, women, they just want to take all your rights away. They don't want you to have bodily autonomy. They don't want you to have agency. They don't want you to have any status in the workplace. They don't want you to have the right to vote. They don't want you in the military. They just don't want you except as incubators. And then they really need you to make the next generation of social conservatives who will then vote for the GOP. And the only reasoning I can think of any of these groups vote for the Republicans is because they're single-issue voters. Now, they're not voting for the same issues, probably. But they're each voting for an issue that the GOP does cover. Sometimes they'll mask themselves like behind fiscal conservatism, which is kind of funny because the only time that the Republicans are fiscally conservative is when it hurts the nation and the poor. When it benefits the wealthy, they're not fiscally conservative. When it helps the military, they're not fiscally conservative. Those groups get all the money they want, all the tax breaks, all the corporate welfare, all the funding they could possibly dream of. And the military has lost trillions of dollars. Just lost, as in like unaccounted for. And the GOP doesn't care about that. But when it comes to feeding kids or adults or education or health care for people or immigration or protecting the environment or public property, as in like our public spaces, suddenly they're all about fiscal conservatism. But these groups who are single-issue voters are willing to ignore everything else the GOP does. But how do you ignore that the GOP supports policies that either want you dead or powerless? How do you ignore that? How do you compartmentize your brain to the extent that your focus is so narrow that the only thing you can see is that single issue and everything else is just invisible? You don't see the racism and the misogyny. You don't see the classism. You don't see the white privilege and the male privilege and the straight privilege and the cis privilege and the Christian privilege. You ignore all that. And you just focus on that one tiny little issue that really gets a buzz in your craw. Everything else, invisible. And I don't get it. I don't know how to explain to you that you should care about other people. I don't know how I convey that to you, that you should be concerned about the well-being of everyone, that everyone is worthy of civil liberties and human rights. And if you can ignore that the GOP doesn't care about the civil liberties and the human rights about anyone who isn't white, straight, cis, male, and Christian, I'm at a loss. Because you're supporting an organization that is white nationalist, that is misogynistic, that is homophobic and transphobic, Islamophobic. And you're doing it election after election after election. So, how do you do it? Tell me. I want to know. I'm not going to defend, you're not going to be able to defend your position, sorry. But I am curious. Your position is undefendable. There is no defense for it. But I am curious how you got to where you are. Because maybe if you can explain it to me, maybe you can unpack it for me, you'll finally see how horrible it is. Finally come to the revelation that maybe you should stop supporting the party of hatred and white nationalism. That just maybe an organization that supports civil liberties and human rights might serve you better.